All right, gang. Welcome to Uncivilized Unplugged. I am your host, Trevor Boehm. Let's start as we always do. Feet flat on the floor, eyes closed unless you're driving. Let's take a moment and let the day begin to wash away all of our troubles and stresses and challenges. Our stomachs relax just a little bit. And if you've listened to any of these before, you know where we're headed, to that tiny flicker of a flame about 2 inches below your belly button. Put your attention down there. Find your center. Find the space where truth lies, where your power lives. The place you go to when you have to make a quick gut level decision. We even use the wording. Dwell in the house of truth that lives in your stomach. If you can't find it, imagine it. This place, this space, this availability for us to draw on all day, every day, all night, anytime. This place of power. Our power in the world. The extraordinary gifts that we as a human bring. The gifts that we can give to the world. Feel that power. Put your hand on your stomach. Feel the warmth. Feel that running down your legs, up your spine, over your skull, and into your heart, where it finds a connection. Place your hand on your heart as well, your other hand. Notice the difference between the two areas. Sensitivity around your heart, softness. Heart sees the world and feels the world through a different lens than your stomach does. And the two work together. They are a dynamic duo. They are the primal and the divine, the yin and the yang, the masculine and the feminine. Feel the connection between the two. Feel what happens when they do connect, how each increases the potency of its partner. These areas are not at odds with each other. They're exponentially more powerful and more effective when they stand shoulder to shoulder, back to back, hand to hand. Feel that, all of that going on in you, inside of you. Slowly begin to let your hands fall back into your lap. Take a couple more deep breaths. Let go of anything that's going to keep you from being present the next 50 minutes or so. Wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes. Roll your shoulders back and forth. If you want, crack your neck because that feels good. And then slowly at your pace, Begin to blink your eyes and come back into the room that you're in, into our room. Oh, amazing. We had a couple people hop on in the middle of that. Beautiful. All right, guys. So I posted a link in the chat if you can find it. I tell you a little bit of a quick story. This is from when I did the Boulder Outdoor Survival School on my Year to Live project, and it's a piece about forgiveness. On the very last day of, God, it was 28 days of living in the woods with a knife, a water bottle, a compass, and a blanket, and losing a shit ton of weight and getting frostbite and generally being moderately miserable, but yet also awesome. On the very last night of the course, the group of us, about 10 people, we met in a parking lot with the instructors, and they said, you have one more assignment. And we thought we were done, but this was at about 8 o'clock at night. And they said, tonight at midnight, it is a full moon. And you guys now have to walk the 14 miles back into our camp. I'm like, oh shit, that's a long walk. And here was the kicker. They said, we want you to decide what you leave here in the woods and what you bring with you back to society. Who do you want to be as you re-enter society after this period of reclusion? I was like, oh man, that's intense. And so here I am walking down the path about 2 hours in, and the full moon is just shining. It's brilliant moon. It's the middle of Utah in the desert. So the moon looked like something out of Star Wars. And granted, I haven't eaten in a while and I've lost a lot of weight and I'm cold as fuck and I'm walking and keep looking over the shoulder being like, I think the moon wants to talk to me. No drugs, just these things happen sometimes. And so I stopped and looked back and was like, fuck you want from me? Just tell me what you want from me. And I swear to God, this is what came through. Was I was re-entering after a divorce and after a business separation. And the moon showed me two different quick pictures. One was 100% forgiveness. If I let go of all the perceived hurts and all of the perceived ways that I had been victimized through this process. That was right, and that was freedom. 0.01% resentment was to the left. And that was right back into the old life I've been living. Drinking too much, smoking too much dope, blaming other people. Not full expression. This side was a movement, was speaking on stages, was writing books, was everything that I'd ever wanted. That side was hell. And I went, fuck! Can I do anything else but forgive everybody and let go of this victim mentality? I'll like negotiate. Like, can I go 50-50? What if I work out a lot? Whatever it was. And nope, you're right or you're left. And so I remember doing it and walking through the desert yelling, I forgive you, I forgive you, I forgive you. To everybody, even to myself especially. And the last 2 hours of that walk, I swear to God, it felt like someone picked me up by the shoulders and carried me through. Not a pain. The pain left my legs. The blisters left my feet. All the pain was gone. It was magical. And I tell you that because tonight we're going to touch on a couple of really, really interesting subjects, one of which is forgiveness. And the beauty of posting that article is that is also the first time someone publicly said, you are so full of shit, I hate your writing, and I think that you should go back in the woods and figure your life out. And I was like, okay, I can either practice what I preach here or write a well-worded response how this guy can go fuck himself in the ear. But I didn't. So forgiveness is the theme tonight, or one of the themes. We've got a very interesting guest with a very varied background. For those of you who are new here, this is the Uncivilized Unplugged. My name is Traver Boehm. I'm the founder of the Uncivilized Men's Movement, Man Uncivilized, and the Uncivilized Nation. And my mission, and I hope you all have a mission, is to change the way 1 million men express their masculinity by combining and celebrating the primal. I love that shit. And mixing in consciousness and the divine. It feels like the current movement says, let's take the primal and get rid of it. I think the APA actually just came out with an article as to why we should do that. I disagree with it. Primal and the divine. The man we are speaking to tonight is a great mix of those two. I know this because I know him. We're going to talk a lot about law enforcement. We're going to talk about what do you do when bad things happen to you or happen around you that you're involved in? How do you alchemize pain, hardship, being angry, and turn it into something, a movement, an idea, a mission to help people stop killing themselves, stop hurting themselves, and stop causing damage in the society in which they live. So frame for the hour, just so we said it, just so everybody, including anybody who may be nervous in the camera, just two dudes hanging out in the living room, letting a bunch of people watch a conversation. So the unplugged idea was to find the most interesting people that you probably never heard of. I stopped saying the most interesting people you never heard of because the guests were like, wait a minute, no one's ever heard of me. The most interesting people you've probably never heard of. So with that, please give a warm but quiet welcome to our guest tonight, Officer David Boyd. Welcome, brother. Thank you for coming. Ooh, I think I muted you. Whoa, don't say anything. Sorry about that. I think your phone was going off during the meditation.
So my friend trying to get into the meeting.
Okay, I child locked you.
Yeah.
How appropriate.
So thanks for the opportunity to come on here tonight and the opportunity to spread the mission and spread the word of forgiveness and holistic leadership. So definitely appreciate it. For those of you who don't know me, which is probably all of you, unless you found me on Instagram somehow, my name's David Boyd. I'm a career police officer. I'm a dad of two, a husband of one. She's on the call right now listening in. I had one practice marriage before this one, but we'll get to that here in just a little while. I spent 4 years in the Marine Corps on active duty as a crash fire rescue firefighter, working at an airport just in case planes crash. Overseas in Afghanistan, I ran a personal security detail for a high-ranking State Department official. After that, I spent 1.5 years as a 911 dispatcher or telecommunicator, whichever term you prefer, and then found my calling as a police officer after spending some time behind the radio. And I've been a full-time police officer since January of 2011.
Wow.
Worked in a large eastern North Carolina, or large eastern coast department in central North Carolina for about 6.5 years, and then moved to the suburbs where it's a little bit quieter. And I've been with my current department for about 2 years. But I work full-time as a community outreach officer, and I'm on our SWAT team. I'm a life coach or transformation coach. I'm also a CrossFit coach and a full-time college student. So I got quite the work going on. So if anybody out there is like, man, how do I do all of that kind of, how do I fit more into my life? I'd be more than happy to talk to you about how to get more stuff in while still having a productive life.
Maybe we should unmute your wife. Let her chime in and be like, actually, I'll tell you how you do it.
Yeah, it's with a little support from that one too. She,
I imagine.
Takes on a lot so that we can get the mission accomplished.
Amen. That's quite the resume, man. Do you sleep?
Yes, sleep is super important, especially in because I do so much. If I didn't sleep, I wouldn't be able to do what I do anywhere near as well as I do it.
Yeah. Question for you then. You've got such a varied background. And we were talking at the start of the call about most people don't know what you do. And so we're going to take first responder and drop that down just to your expertise of law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that we don't know that you do? And why is that important?
Honestly, the average person doesn't understand the obscurity of what we do, I think is probably the best way to put it. Okay. We handle so much in society has been, for lack of a better term, dumped on law enforcement. we're the counselor, we're the teacher, we're a coach, we're a mentor, we're a disciplinarian, we're a psychotherapist sometimes. And you wrap all of that up, and then you've got to add in the law enforcement part of it, where we've got that duty to enforce the law.
Yeah.
That's the side most people see, is there's blue lights in my mirror and now I'm getting a ticket. But if you look at social media, you once a week or so, you see that like, oh, a cop did something awesome, and let's tweet about it or type about it for just a second, and then let's go back to like, oh man, there's blue lights in my mirror, and this is unfortunate for me again today.
What drew you to law enforcement? Like what was the like, yeah, this is what I want to do?
So I actually grew up never wanting to be the police. Okay. And my best friend who's on the call can attest to that, because he always wanted to be a cop. He's a cop too. And I always made fun of him for it. Yeah. So surprisingly enough, I ended up in law enforcement. I think it's just karma working out. So I spent that year and a half in 911, and I was stuck listening to traumatic incidents happening.
Oh, wow.
When a woman calls you and she's hiding in the closet because she thinks somebody's broken into her house in the middle of the night. Or I was on the phone. There was a really bad car crash, 4-car pileup on one of our interstates in the county. And I was on the phone with one of the guys who was in the crash, and he was standing on the side of the road, and it happened on a bridge over about an 80-foot drop off.
Holy shit.
That pileup got hit by another car going about 70 miles an hour. Oh, that guy, not knowing what was on the other side of that wall for the bridge, the 80-foot drop off, jumped off the bridge while I'm on the phone with him.
Oh, wow.
You hear the splash, the phone go dead.
Oh my God.
I didn't find out until, 2 or 3 hours later what had happened. So those kinds of things, and listening to officers who are crying for help on the other side of the radio, like in foot pursuits and in fights, and not being able to do anything but sit there behind the radio and hit some keys as officers are checking en route to make sure that they're in the computer system. So ultimately that was what drew me out of the radio and out onto the road.
Yeah, I can't imagine sitting there, especially a man with your background and get shit doneness and desire to get in there and get in the fight, having come out of the military. And what I do know about you, man, that must have been a very frustrating time in your life.
It was. I was very unhappy I was happy because I was being of service to people, but I was unhappy with the way in which I was restricted on my level of service. You answer 200, 300 phone calls in a day, and you're giving people help, but there was never any closure when you're dealing with that many people's problems all day long.
Yeah. Wow.
It was very taxing emotionally.
Yeah. I imagine that is also another one of the answers to the question of what do we not know about what you do? Mm-hmm. I would love to get some blood work done on those people and just see, like, what are your cortisol levels throughout the day? How are you handling this? Do you sleep? Do you eat? What are your relationships like? What's the divorce rate like for that? What are the alcoholism rates like for that? Let's talk. You said
are understaffed. Like the nationwide 911 centers are, pretty low staffed. And so they're working overtime all the time, and picking up extra shifts, and so they're not recovering the way they should be. There's a whole plethora of other issues in that community, as well as the broader first responder community, because most people don't think about 911 operators when they think about first responders.
Yeah, I didn't.
But without them, none of the rest of us can come do what we do.
Right, and we have to remember there's a human there.
Mm-hmm.
That woke up, went to the bathroom, got something to eat, has a bunch of hopes, dreams, fears, and relationships and friends and challenges and health issues, and goes and sits there and divides the most important phone calls of our lives. and gets them in the right place. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for doing that. And thanks for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk a little, let's segue if we can into forgiveness. I know that's a piece here.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been an elemental piece in your own personal journey. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Can you
So,
tell us a little bit about that?
so I mentioned the practice marriage.
I've had one of those too, just so you know. High five.
High five. If you don't have a practice marriage, how do you know you're doing it right? You know,
I think a couple people on this call just went, "Oh yeah, yeah, had one of those." God bless their exes. Yeah.
So, typical military sob story. You know, I'm not going to get into a whole bunch of details about that. But I was young in the Marine Corps. You know, when you're young, you're like, man, especially in the military, it's, man, I might go to war. I might get killed. I need to check off all of these life boxes, or, you know, life goals boxes before I go over there. You know, that's why so many Marines are, you know, so many people in the military are married young, have kids young, because you never know. And so, like a young, dumb Marine, I got married right out of high school, proposed at graduation at Paris Island, got married a few months later, and then I'll be honest, you know, I wasn't the greatest husband in the world. I was 18 years old. I didn't know anything about being a husband. It was just the thing to do. So I deployed to Afghanistan, came home, found out that she'd had an affair. We got separated. I got hurt during playing sports, and then during a training accident, which ultimately ended my military career. But the divorce was bad. The divorce ultimately changed the direction of my life. Went entirely because I was planning to be a career Marine. So
gotcha.
I told myself, you know, real quick that I had moved on and forgiven, and, you know, all was well in the world. But back there, you know, back in the lizard brain, if you will, there was still a lot of rage pent up against my ex-wife.
Yeah, and I told myself, this was a unique experience too. There's another element you said that about her cheating. Is that correct?
I'm sorry?
With who she was with?
Yeah, so she had an affair with my my best friend from the Marine Corps.
We'll just slide that one into the story.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for picking that part up.
Yeah. Just...
so during that, I lost my wife and I lost my best friend that was in the military with me. So I spent 10 years or 9.5 years or so saying, yeah, I forgive my ex-wife. I forgive my ex-best friend. You know, life moves on. It is what it is. I got a fantastic wife. I got a fantastic set of kids now. Ultimately, the best thing that ever happened to me. You just got to trust the process and that things are going to happen in the right way for you, ultimately. So I ran into my ex-wife at Walmart one day, of all places. We all know how wonderful Walmarts can be, the nationwide. Great things that
bringing
happen.
exes together. That's what they do. Yeah.
So during this time frame, my ex had also become a police officer and worked in a town next to me. She had then started dating. Her and my ex-best friend had separated. Then she started dating another one of my friends who worked at that police department that was next door to me. And so that brought up a whole lot of feelings.
Yeah, that's probably an understatement.
Yeah.
Seems to be a pattern in her life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we ran into each other. All those feelings had, you know, come out in some of my circles. I'd had some words with some friends, and I wanted to apologize to both of them, you know, starting on this path of self-discovery and enlightenment, if you will. And so I went to have that conversation, and the conversation went much like it did when we were together. And I realized in that moment that I had been harboring all of this pent-up rage in my lizard brain for almost 10 years.
Wow.
And I was in a very dark place. You know, Trevor, you and I started talking around that time.
Yeah.
And that's also when I realized that I really, really had been lying to myself for a very long time. I had forgiven a guy who tried to kill me a couple of years earlier on the job, but I hadn't found it in my heart to forgive my ex-wife for, for just changing my life, changing the course of my life.
Hold that for a second. Let's take a breath on that one. So you just threw something into the conversation. So you'd forgiven a guy who tried to kill you a couple of years before.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just elaborate a tiny bit on that one?
Yeah. So I was on patrol one day in an apartment complex, and I thought I saw a guy walking down the street who I thought had warrants. So I pulled over to run that guy, and I'm sitting there in my car typing on the computer, and I look up across the street and I see a fight breaking out. So I blue light, go across the grass, go across the road in the median, pull up next to him, hop out, and it's a guy hitting a woman with another woman trying to break it up.
Okay.
And so I hop out, yell at him to break it up. He turns around, sees me. That gives them, the two women, time to break off and start to run away.
Okay.
And when he looks back, he realizes they're going, and he starts coming towards me. He was, I gave him commands to stop, and your typical police stuff. You're under arrest, all that kind of stuff. Didn't make a difference. He came towards me and swung his right hand up towards my head. I kind of did that rhino nose block, put my hand up against my head and ducked a little bit, and his hand glanced off the top of my head. And I felt my head get wet, and I didn't know what that was about. Him and I did some fighting, some pushing. I used my baton on him a few times. Had no effect whatsoever.
Is he on drugs?
No, he was experiencing some mental issues and
okay,
alcohol use.
Okay.
So I back up a few feet, and with my baton out here at the ready, trying to give him commands, I look down and I see that his hands are dripping in blood. And that hand that he had just swung at me had a knife in it.
Wow.
So that hand that had glanced off the top of my head had left all that blood and narrowly missed stabbing me in the head.
Wow.
So ultimately, we, I got some help there. He had some things that were going on that day. He made some statements that, made me think that there was a heck of a lot more going on there than him wanting to try to kill me. And it wasn't about me in the moment. He didn't really know. So I got some help there. He eventually decided to give up. We got him into custody.
You said you got some help. Other people came to help you.
Other police officers arrived on scene, and we were able to get him into custody without any more incident.
Okay.
But he actually, prior to trying to stab me, he had stabbed his girlfriend several times in the neck. And then came after me.
Gotcha.
So we got him some help and got him some stitches, got his girlfriend treated. And then he got transported to the jail and charged accordingly.
Okay.
So there was.
Yeah. How about you? What happened to you that day?
So
did they come stitch you up? Did they take you to the hospital?
No, thankfully, I was just covered in blood from his wound, and from the blood that came from his girlfriend.
Oh, I got you.
Thankfully, I was uninjured that day.
Okay. Beautiful.
But I had really good leadership looking out for me that day. People that I really looked up to, who realized how distraught I was after that kind of incident.
Say more about that. You had really good leadership looking out for you. What does that mean to us?
So I had leaders who knew me and knew what was baseline and what was normal behavior for me.
Yeah.
And they could tell right off the bat that I was not okay and I was not in a good spot to keep going for the day. Because
Okay.
I was a hair away from shooting him because we were in a standoff.
Of course.
He wouldn't submit.
You're within 21 feet, correct?
Oh yeah, well within 21 feet.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, that's the 21-foot rule is a kind of a standard. If you're within 21 feet of a suspect with a edged weapon, you won't be able to get your gun out and take a shot before they can get to you and hurt you with that edged weapon. So,
and for those of you that are curious about that, I remember running this practice when I worked for Gavin DeBecker. We were like, this is bullshit. I could totally get my gun out and shoot it. And we'd put unloaded guns in our holster and be like, okay, you ready? I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready. Okay. And literally by the time we got to here, we're getting tackled. Right. And that was knowing it was coming. I can't imagine it coming, on the fly like that. Okay. So they took you offline for the day.
Yeah. And sent me home.
Okay.
I had a friend of mine drive me home that day.
And what's the aftercare for this? Is it like, hey, someone just tried to stab you in the head, take the next 2 hours, get yourself sorted out, we'll see you tomorrow? Or
so it happened mid-afternoon, and we worked 12-hour shifts. So I got sent home almost mid-shift.
Okay.
But I was also very lucky at the time. I worked in a police department that had a full-time police psychologist who her entire job was to talk to cops and do counseling sessions. So I had her at my disposal. A few days later, I was able to make an appointment and go sit down and talk with her. But that didn't change perception of my actions within the department, both negative and positive. Surprisingly enough, you get negative feedback from people when you don't take somebody's life, and it's when you're justified to. It's kind of a tragedy if you look at it that way.
So you were getting shit from other officers? You were getting shit from above? Like, where did the heat come from?
It was more like lateral, if we're thinking not chain of command wise, lateral, my level type stuff.
Right.
People,
the guys like, you should have shot him.
Yeah. People like in the locker room, like, oh yeah, you should have shot him, or I would have shot him. You had every reason to. Why didn't you do it? And then, these are your peers that are judging you. I knew I did the right thing, and my command knew that I did the right thing. I got an email from a major, which was the third highest rank in the police department, saying, this was awesome. You did a phenomenal job. He'd been involved in an officer-involved shooting early on in his career and was our senior use of force instructor, telling me what a phenomenal job I did and that these kinds of comments were going to come from other officers. He prepared me for that. So, but it still doesn't change the sting of the locker room banter and the locker room second guessing.
Can we ask the flavor of it? Is it like guys kind of Monday morning quarterback, like, I would have shot him? Or is it like, hey, you should have fucking shot him. What's wrong with you?
Little mix of both.
Okay. So this isn't just kind of poking at each other like, I would have.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's two very different mindsets that are going on in policing in the 21st century. You've got the guardian mindset on one side and then the warrior mindset on the other. And there's this, constant back and forth between which one the police should be adopting. And I think that there's a place kind of like, the primal and divine that we talk about with Man Uncivilized. There's a place for the warrior mindset and there's a place for the guardian mindset. And 95% of the time, we should be operating in that guardian mindset. When we're talking warrior mindset, we're talking about chasing down the wolves. We're talking about chasing down, the drug dealers and the shooters and the people who are wreaking havoc in our communities. But that's 5% of what we do, The other 95%, we should be serving, protecting, guarding our communities.
Definitely. So it's really interesting to hear that you got flack from your own people for not taking someone's life. Right. I think that's an insight that most of us don't see and hear. But okay, so how did you work through the process? You said a second ago that you had forgiven him but hadn't forgiven your ex-wife. Can you walk us through a little bit of the process of forgiving him?
Yeah, so I was obviously pretty pissed off for a while. Somebody had, tried to kill me, essentially. Tried to stab somebody in the head without the intent to try to kill them.
And just context-wise, were you married with kids at this point?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, and it's a much bigger deal even.
And then I was kind of left in the wind by the district attorney's office, which added to my anger issues around the incident. It's for those who are in law enforcement or in, the law field, it's a pretty common thing that this happens. But at the suspect's first appearance, they pled him out. without even having talked to me. They reduced his charge, pled him out, and he spent 6 months in jail for stabbing his girlfriend and trying to stab me.
So what does pled him out mean to people who don't understand the law?
So they took his charges, reduced them from felonies to misdemeanors, gave him 6 months active time.
Oh, it's a misdemeanor to try to kill a cop. It's kind of like drinking or peeing in public.
Yeah.
I think I might have gotten that. Anyway. Okay.
Okay. So that added, I was already upset about the incident. And then to have the district attorney's office do that 3 days after the incident without even a phone call to me was pretty enraging. I kind of lost a little faith in the justice system when that happened. But so time heals all wounds. Time and contact. Yeah. I worked that beat where it happened. That was my primary place to patrol. And so I saw his family, and I saw his mom and dad and his brother and sister and his girlfriend still. And they got to tell me the other side of things, what led up to all of that, that happened that day, and how I just happened to be the cop that was in that spot that day. And once I started putting those pieces together, I was like, it was never about me. If it was the guy who rides the beat next to me who just happened to be there, he would have been in the same situation.
Yeah.
He didn't hate Officer Boyd. He just knew he didn't want to go to jail that day, or he wanted to, in that moment, maybe he wanted to commit suicide by cop. I've never asked him that question, and I don't even know if he would know based on the mental state he was in.
Yeah.
But so all those conversations were had, follow up with the family, and that gave me more peace of mind and less. And as I talked and as I got to know them more, less anger. And ultimately, a year later, I ran into him before he went on a Wendy's run, or a McDonald's run at late at night. It was like 8 to 10 o'clock, somewhere in there. And we got to catch up and talk and tell each other, I'm sorry.
Wow. Can I ask what the first sentence was when you saw him? Was it, hey man, remember you want to try to kill me? Or was it him approaching you? What was the opener on that?
So I saw him coming out, and I walked up to him and his girlfriend, and there was we just kind of reconnected. It wasn't as awkward as you would think.
Yeah.
He changed his life a lot.
Wow.
And I can respect any man that's willing to work hard and put in the time and the effort to change who they are.
Wow.
What that takes is pretty up there.
So I imagine it's you get a feel for his humanity,
mm-hmm.
right? And then it's not just a guy trying to kill you, but it's a man who's got a girlfriend who's got some challenges, who ran into you on a unique day.
Yeah, and they had another kid on the way at this point.
Oh wow.
He had a full-time job, was a productive member of society.
Awesome. Connect me then to, let's circle back to running into your ex-wife in a Walmart.
Mm-hmm.
So how does what you felt and learned in that situation come into play with her, or does it at that point?
No, it really did. I realized after that, when I started feeling this pain and anger again, that I needed to figure it out. I needed to go back, 10 yees, and I needed to sort out all of this that I just tucked away, and then said, I'm good. I'm okay. I'm a young Marine. I can handle this. This isn't a big deal. I just got back from Afghanistan. It's okay.
Right.
So I went back and I did the work, and I felt the feelings that had been waiting for me. And it was,
and they'll just sit there for 10 years, won't they? Like,
oh, they totally do, man.
Anytime, motherfucker.
Waiting for you to trip over it and then, ruin your life all over again.
Right.
And something that we had talked about around this time frame is that I had looked at all of this through this lens of, my ex-wife had taken this from me and taken this, that. And in reality, I'd surrendered these things willingly rather than her taking. Like, I didn't I didn't have a choice what she did, but I had a choice of how I reacted and how I interpreted and moved forward with my life. And I made the wrong choices in that moment.
Let's just hold that thought so that maybe you could repeat that again. That when something happens to you or with you, that the other person is responsible for what they do, and then you get to.
I get to respond how I want to.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of people on this call or people that are listening who are, it happens to all of us, right? It's the, oh, fuck, it happened to me, or the bypass of, it's okay, everything happens for a reason. And what's missing is the choice of, how do I want to interpret this? First, you got to go get your nose rubbed in the shit. You don't get to forget about that part. Like, okay, this just sucks for a while. What was the secondary? What was the second outcome for you? So the first was, holy shit, she took all this from me. What was the reframe? And how did that reframe your actions moving forward?
So I realized that I wasn't, I hadn't really been accepting the gifts that had been given me, the opportunities that had come into my life, and truly appreciating where I was. You know, I'd been married to my wife, my current wife, for, 8 or 9 years at that point.
Wow.
And we talked about it and all of that, but we'd never talked emotions, and we'd never talked aftermath and all that kind of stuff. And we were able to have honest, open conversations about all those things. And we still have honest, open conversations now about feelings and about incidents and trauma, and all of those things that we were never talking about before. And most men are not talking about.
Wow. Let's first of all, good for you.
Thanks, bro.
Right? Like, that's not an easy conversation for any man to have, period. And I don't want to negate anything because of your background, but your background was hyper masculine. The Marine Corps, law enforcement, SWAT, MMA, CrossFit. It wasn't the touchy-feely, like, you didn't go do a lot of yoga with dudes in incense. Yeah. Can you even touch your toes? It's a whole other conversation.
But I went and did yoga a couple times with my wife, and I'm like, God, this is the worst thing ever. Why would anybody hold this lizard position for longer than 6 seconds at a time? This is stupid.
It's a whole other conversation. So first of all, let me commend you for doing that. And I want this to be the opener for guys that go, holy fuck, if this guy can do it, I can do it too. Because your community, tell me a little bit about not even just the statistics, but what is going on with first responders and suicide?
Oh, it's rampant, brother. It's terrible. More first responders commit suicide every year than are killed on the line of duty.
That's fucking insane.
And not only that, it's not even just the suicide statistics, but it's what we do to ourselves during our career that shortens our lives after retirement.
Say more about that.
So what's at least taught in North Carolina during law enforcement training is that the average police officer dies 5 years after retirement.
What's the average age of retirement?
55.
So the average police officer is dead at 60.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And because of the stress, because of the lack of, taking care of ourselves and working rotating shifts and eating McDonald's and, not working out and not dealing with any of our emotional baggage, the amount of stress that, your body can only handle so much of it before it's just like, no, I'm going to start shutting down.
Yeah, I am. I have a bad day and my mic doesn't work. No one's ever tried to stab me in the head as of yet. And I'm from the cops that I've talked to, this is like any given Wednesday. Right. And then you got to go home and be a husband and a father and a boyfriend and a girlfriend and a wife and all the other. I'm just for you. How do you think having conversations like this, how do you think first responders, both male and female, let's center this, I would say primarily around men who have less emotional intelligence. How does having conversations like this, or how do you foresee men opening up and engaging with their emotions in this way, men in your line of work, how do you see that changing the outcome?
Honestly, I think it's one of our topics that we were going to talk about tonight, but I think a change of leadership mentality. And I don't just mean that as in a sense of chiefs and assistant chiefs and majors and captains and,
Right.
every person that pins on a badge, whether that's police, fire, EMS, every single person that does that every day is a leader in our community.
Mm.
And we have to start looking at ourselves individually as leaders and taking care of ourselves as leaders, because people look to us. When I'm out in public, people look to me for whatever it is. If somebody calls the police and I show up, I'm in charge when I get there.
Right.
I'm the leader.
Yeah.
Even if I've been out of the academy 6 minutes,
right,
and I'm still on field training and I show up and I'm in charge at that scene, I'm the leader. And so we need to shift away from the traditional views of leadership, where what we're looking at, and this isn't just policing or fire or EMS, this goes across all spectrums in the corporate world too. Traditional leadership looks at what can or is this individual doing for our company or agency, department, and it looks at tasks and task accomplishment versus individual character. And that's not to say every police department or fire department or EMS, or corporate world or, corporate job does this, but that is traditionally how we look at leadership. And I think in order to develop this leadership, we need to switch over to the holistic leadership idea, which comes from knowing individuals' character strengths and then using them in a manner to serve others. If you take care of yourself in the right way, mind, body, spirit, however you want to look at it, people are going to see that. They're going to follow what you're doing, and you're going to, people are going to come to you for advice, and people are going to look to you for guidance. And you've got to, in order to do those kind of things, you need to have a deep understanding of, what character traits you possess and in what ways you can use them. Coming from my background of, Marine, coach, cop, firefighter, dispatcher, all of these things, I've always thought of myself as a leader, and I would think that my leadership character trait would be pretty high up on that list. I took a long survey, the Values and Action Survey, if anybody's familiar with that. I took that a while back, and it gives you a ranking of the 24 character traits that are identified by positive psychology. And it gives you a ranking of each one. And leadership for me was 15.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, what? There's no way.
The 23andMe of leadership.
Yes. But when I went back and I dissected my top 5, because that's what I think is super important. These are the ways that we're expressing ourselves on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
My top 5 was curiosity, fairness, forgiveness, love, and bravery.
Wow.
And Trevor, you know me.
Yeah.
You can probably attest that those are pretty accurate top 5 character traits for me.
Yeah, even just your willingness to have this conversation, those are top 5. This isn't a normal cop conversation. No offense to law enforcement, but it's not. So it makes sense to me why you're spearheading an idea that I imagine isn't that popular, of let's make emotionally intelligent police officers and first responders. Let's get men who wear badges and carry guns, gosh, what a concept, to also have an understanding of their own emotionality and what they see on a daily basis and process that. Because dudes are really good at looking at statistics. They're not that good, right? But then we're not good at going, what do we do about it? How do we change? And it sounds like you're the tip of the spear on that. Have you gotten kickback from this or negativity?
No, honestly, everybody I talked to about it has been pretty supportive. I mean, the thing is that there are people all over that are trying to do this. And there's a psychologist, Dr. Gil Martin. He wrote a book called Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement. And he travels the country and the world giving these giving classes about
Mm.
how to survive this career. But
Wow, what an idea.
sitting in a classroom for 2 hours or 3 hours and reading a book doesn't give you any practical skills.
Right.
You're not diving in, and you're not, unless somebody's holding you accountable to doing exercises and changing the way you eat, sleep, breathe, meditate, think
Yeah.
every day. It's just another book that's sitting on the shelf.
Yeah.
And I think
Go ahead.
that changing the holistic leadership idea and more connectedness amongst all of us is like, man, we could see those numbers go way down if we could just do that.
Yeah, and the peripheral, the unintended consequences of that, right? Because every one of those people goes home to someone, or most of them go home to someone.
Mm-hmm.
Most of those people go home to kids. They go home to a spouse. They have neighbors, right? So it's not just, I think we need to look at that man or woman as the tip of an iceberg. And when you do get to change the tip of the iceberg, you'll change everything and everyone underneath it. It's phenomenal, man. Good for you. Good for you. I know it's groundbreaking, right? And it's not easy to be a leader, especially when it's not, I'm just going to be the most gung-hoest ever. I'm going to actually be holistic. I'm going to incorporate, you've done it, primal divine, masculine, feminine, everything we talked about in that meditation. So I asked Catherine Bosley this last week. It's a new question. Because there are people here who are listening who are kind of badasses, if someone listening to this could help you, what would you like to ask them for? If anyone listening to this is like, hey, I want to help this guy, what is it that we can do for you to help you?
Get people talking, or get cops and firefighters and EMS and dispatchers and vets, get talking. Everybody knows somebody who fits into that category. And most of us are hurting in some way, whether we know it or not. Most of us have some trauma we've experienced in our lives. Have a conversation with them. If you don't want to have a conversation with them, send them my email.
I've done that. Remember, we had the guy call who said he was in trouble. We got him right in touch with you.
Mm-hmm. That guy had seen some horrible things.
Yeah.
And had never had any support. It happened 6 months ago, and the first time he could openly cry in front of another cop was when I got on the phone with him. And that's a powerful thing. So if you know somebody like that, or know somebody who needs help, I'm more than willing to talk. I'm more than willing to give advice. I'm more than willing. I've been in a lot of these situations through all the things that I've done in my life. And I don't want anybody else to become part of the statistic.
God bless you, brother. And thank you. Oh man, it's juicy, right? We all know, my best friend from high school, been a career cop, right? We all know someone who's in a first responder scenario. For people listening, so tell us, how do we get more about you? How do we find more about you? Do you have anything going on? I know you've got something going on too that I think really can help, actively help, as opposed to just get them in touch with me. No, law enforcement guys listening, listen to this. What do you got going on?
So you guys can follow me on Instagram. It's man_uncivilized_Dave. And then my email is dave@manuncivilized.com. And coming up, I'm going to be hosting what we're calling the Man Uncivilized Basic Academy. It's going to be a more in-depth dive into holistic leadership and self-development. We're going to be talking about forgiveness, and we're going to be talking about compassion. Some of these other character traits that we can develop. And on top of that, we're going to be talking about meditation, and there's going to be physical fitness requirements. And some abstinence requirements from some negative things that are probably impacting our decision making on a day-to-day basis. But I'm gonna throw a link here in the chat for the intake form.
Beautiful. And then read it out loud for people who are listening to this. And
we'll have to put it in the show notes. It's kind of long, and it's a Google Doc form.
Okay, we'll attach it another way.
Yeah.
Okay, before we wrap up, and before I say a few things, how does forgiveness play into law enforcement and first responderhood? And for those of you listening who aren't first responders, take this and apply it. But how just this idea of forgiveness, because I don't hear a lot of conversations around. I mean, you use some really big words: compassion, forgiveness, kindness. Like, we're talking fucking law enforcement. We're talking like dudes. We're talking the dudes, right? Guys with guns and badges and biceps. How did that play in with you, and how would you see just the idea of forgiveness? Like, how would that adopting that help law enforcement right now?
I think that it means, to me anyways, it means accepting people where they are. And I know that, it's kind of corny and it's kind of a catchphrase to say that, but there's a lot of judgment in law enforcement of people's situations, and not a lot of acceptance for who people are and what they bring to the world. It's, oh, that guy's a criminal, so his opinion doesn't matter, or her opinion doesn't matter. Being able to accept people in their situation, man. Like, there's a gang member that I used to arrest regularly. I mean, like, I've arrested him 7 or 8 times. And like, I've had that guy in tears. Like, we get to the Sally port of the jail and get him out, and I'm like, bro, what the heck? What are you doing? You've got kids, why are you doing this? And 5 minutes into the conversation, he's bawling like a baby. If we can do more of that, like, it doesn't hurt anybody to have a conversation or try to have a conversation. And the serve part, that's where forgiveness falls in, is in the serve part.
Yeah, beautifully stated. I think for all of us that are in service, that forgiveness is the bridge between our own perceptions and the other person's humanity. And without that, we're just going to see them through the lens of our own wounds and our own anger, our own pain, and our own story. So many beautiful nuggets here. When we were pitching this, I was like, it's going to be a talk about forgiveness from a place I don't think you're used to hearing it, which makes you all the more unique and all the more commendable for both coming on and just sharing stories that I can watch are difficult for you to share, and a subject matter that's not common for 2 pretty fucking jacked dudes to be talking about. So truly, I'm really proud of you.
Thank you.
I mean that. I know I mean that. I hope you take that in, that I've watched your journey. I've watched how you've grown, but more so just for the courage to stand up in front of people and say, this is who I am. This is what I'm going through. And if you take nothing else from this, you can learn from me. So bless you, man. I truly, truly am. My hat's off to you as a man. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining.
Yeah, definitely. So for those of you who are listening, if you're interested in getting more information on the Uncivilized movement, you can find me on Instagram at Traverboehm, TraverBoehm, or www.manuncivilized.com. The Unplugged happens on most Thursday nights when I'm not traveling. So we're going to actually take a couple weeks off here as I'm going to be on the road, but I'll let everybody know. I appreciate you all who come in live. Yes, sir.
We did have a question from Vanessa.
We have a question?
Uh-huh.
Where is she? What's going on here? What on earth where are you, darling? Can I unmute you? Go for it. Hi.
Find me on mute. I just wondered, I had a good friend of mine, my best friend, about 5 years ago. Her husband committed suicide. He was a firefighter, had been injured on the job, tried to be a physical therapist after. And I just feel like, he never got back to a good place, clearly, and left behind 2 kids. And so, as someone that is an inspiration and someone that, holds a high regard for himself and carries such great characteristics, if you could offer something for children, like I think about their son, who's now 12, as he transforms into his own young man, can there be some kind of help for someone that young so that he doesn't carry any of that, of his dad's stuff, forward? I don't know if that really goes in line with any of this, but I thought I'd ask.
No, and it totally, it makes sense. Unfortunately, suicides do run in families sometimes. I had a good friend of mine that we grew up together, and his dad committed suicide, and he joined the Marine Corps, got discharged because of a stomach issue at boot camp, came home and killed himself. There's stories like that all over the place, and I would hate for that. And that's something Trevor and I can definitely explore and talk about a little bit further about how we could try to do something. And
David, Matt, so we're just getting one quick question. You could just reiterate, where do people find you? So it's man_uncivilized_Dave. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Or Dave at manuncivilized.com.
Beautiful. All right, gang. For those of you that gave up your time, energy, and attention to join us, thank you so, so much. These are just getting more and more fascinating, these conversations. And I know it's direct your time. You're not listening to this while you're running or doing dishes or other stuff. So thank you on behalf of me, on behalf of Dave. These are the conversations I believe that are the solution. And these are the conversations that I want to keep having, even though they're difficult and they're challenging for everybody involved and they're confronting. But I know when we sign in and there's a bunch of people up top, it's like, okay, this is important. We'll keep doing it. So I truly appreciate all of your attention and your willingness to be a part of this. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your night. Go be uncivilized, you fucking legends. Bye.